Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for joining on this first ever webinar from I Love Nature. Uh, Quick introduction of myself. Hi, I'm Sagar Veera, founder of I Love Nature. What is I Love Nature? What we do, we'll talk about that as we go ahead in some time in one of the slides. And today, what we are going to talk about is about the sustainable living and few very basic things that we will be following. I'm not a very technical person, so if you are looking at big technicalities and complicated calculations, etc., I may probably disappoint you. I'm going to look at it from the perspective of a common layman, what a normal layman like me can understand, and how can we really follow these things in our day-to-day life. So we'll keep the conversations very light, very simple. Anybody can follow that conversations. We'll take about 35 to 40 minutes to run through about the few of the thoughts that we have in the mind and talk about the basics of it. And then we intend to keep last about 15 to 20 minutes open for the question and answer session. With me, I also have Avinash Thawani. He is helping me manage the entire webinar. So at any point in time, if whatever you're putting on the Facebooks, etc., and the queries, questions, he will be kind of supporting me. And Avinash, big thanks for being such a wonderful support there. So we'll get started, and I'll share my screen. I've put together a few basic slides so that it can help me also to manage the flow. Yeah, I hope you are all able to see the slide now. Uh, First of all, as I said, I mean, thank you very much for all of you being on the call. The fact that you are joining on this webinar, it shows that you have some concern, some interest about the nature. You are definitely keen to know more about it and spread more about the knowledge on the what we are going to talk today. So a big thank you for all of you for showing an interest. That itself is the first very step that is required in any activity that you do, that you must be interested in what we are going to talk about. Let me start by asking a little question kind of a thing. So if I ask everybody on the call or on the people, say that, do you believe in financial planning or do you do financial planning? I'm sure the answer that I will get is 100 out of 100 will say, yes, we do planning. Now, somebody may feel they're excellent in terms of the financial planning. Somebody may not feel that they are very excellent, but whatever, good or bad, everybody would have done some financial planning or not. Some of people must be feeling very comfortable about the financial planning that they have done and feel very secure about their future. Some may not be feeling so very comfortable and they may want to do more or they may want to have more, right? But that's perfectly fine. The basic thing remains is that, yes, all of us have done the financial planning. Now, why do we do financial planning? I mean, very simple answer about that is we all want our future to be secured, right? I mean, money is kind of quite an important aspect in that plays role in our life. All our basic necessities are taken care of through money. All our luxuries, all our wishes taken care of through the money. So it is an essential part of our life, and we all want to be secured from a future perspective, saying is that God forbid if something goes wrong, or God forbid the things happen like the way they happened in the last few months, we need to make sure that we do not have a crisis in survival. We do not run out of money to buy our essentials or whatever that we need, right? So the basic aspect of the financial planning is our future security. That's the basic motive that we do. Now, if you look at the same thing, and if I ask a question to people and say that, okay, it's great that you've done financial planning, but how many of us have done the environment planning? I'm sure most of us will give an answer saying that it's no, I have not. I wouldn't be surprised if many of us say that, oh, what is environment planning? Is there a term like that really exists, or what does it actually mean? Why do we probably have never thought about it, or why do we have never bothered to think about it? It's probably because that does not have an immediate direct impact on our lives. Though it may be wrong to say that it does not have immediate direct impact on our life, but probably somewhere we don't feel as much a pinch about lack of environment planning as we feel about the financial planning. And there are various reasons for that. I mean, when we do financial planning, it's for ourselves, it's driven by us, it's for my family, it's for me, the benefit is going to come to me. right? So I can do it very individual, family based things. But when we look at the environment, it's not only going to affect me positively or adversely. And hence, all of us think that, yeah, I mean, somebody will do it, right? I mean, why do I need to worry about it? Or I'm not even aware about it. Why do I only need to plant trees? There are so many things that everybody needs to do. It's a community, or it's a government, or it's a corporate effort that we all think that they need to look after. And that is where probably somewhere we miss out about our environment planning or the collective responsibility that we have. We all believe that, yes, somebody will do it. So do I really need to worry about it? Somebody will take care of it, or God will take care of it, or the government will take care of it. However, when it comes to looking at things, I think all of us need a good quality environment as much as we need enough finances in our life, right? We all love to go to holidays. Most of our holiday destinations are closer to the nature. We all want to breathe good air. We all kind of keep complaining about the air quality going bad. We all keep about pollutions and the various other not so good environmental aspects that are happening, right? So we all want that, but are we taking enough efforts? Probably yes. Some of us, probably no. Many of us, probably for whatever reason, may or may not be taking enough actions. And which is where, this whole thing goes about the need for the sustainable development. Now, if you look at the thing that we said about, we all want good things to happen, but we want somebody else to do it. And as Gandhiji rightly said, be the change you want to see in the world, right? If we want to see a lot of good things in the world, if we want to see a good quality environment, if we want to breathe a fresh air, then we need to start those changes to come in from us. We need to bring that change that we want the world to see about. And that's what the kind of motto behind what we do. So now let's talk about what is I Love Nature and what our vision is. So I Love Nature is a small group of people where we are trying to promote the concept of sustainable living, and we'll talk about it in the next few slides. And our vision is to actually actively engage individuals and communities to inspire them to live sustainably so that our future generations also are able to live the same or a better quality of life than what we are living today. So what is sustainable living? It's a very simple language. If we were to talk about it, it's a lifestyle choice that seeks to meet one's present need without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. So whatever is the quality of life that we are living, whatever is the quality life that I am living, my next generation and the generation after that and the generation after that should continue to live at least the same quality of life, if not better. So that's exactly is what is called this sustainable living, saying is that as the generation progresses, the quality of life does not deteriorate, it remains the same or improves if at all. Now, it's an attempt to reduce individuals or communities' use of natural and personal resources. We all know that natural resources are finite in nature, right? There is not an infinite resources that are available. Some of the things like water, etc., we may say that, every year there's a rain comes and there is a replenishment happens, but that also is to an extent of finite resources that we have. It's not that ample amount of water is available despite of whatever amount of rains etc happen. So there is finite resources available, and we need to make sure that we make really a good use of those resources. What do these people do who will like kind of live sustainable living? They often attempt to reduce their carbon footprint, right? It's basically the greenhouse gas that we emit in the atmosphere. And how do they do it? They do it by altering the various methods that they use for living. So just for an example, the way they travel, the way they consume energy, the way they consume food, the way they consume the natural resources, they bring a little bit amount of a moderations or some amount of change in their habits and their consumption patterns to make sure that these resources are not depleted or deteriorated. So that's a simple way of kind of talking about the sustainable living. Just to repeat, it's about the quality of life that we are living. Our generations and the future generations should get to live the same or a better quality of life. That's the basics of any sustainable living thing. Now, why is it so important, right? Now, it's mainly important because of the reason, as I said, that the resources are not infinite. They are finite. They are limited in resources. And one of the estimates, and there are various studies flowing, and somebody can easily debate, challenge numbers, etc., and all different perspectives. But broadly, if you look at, there is about 40% more resources that we consume than what we actually put back in the nature. So in terms of whether we consume the amount of water we consume or the kind of air that we pollute, etc., we are doing a much more damage than what actually the mother nature or the earth can actually take it. uh, if we continue to live the kind of life that we are living, and there are again various studies which talks about saying that if we continue to live the kind of life that Indians live, we'll probably need two planets. But if we continue, if all of us live the kind of life, let's say for example Americans live, then even the five earth will be lesser to meet our requirements as we go ahead. So we need, I mean, like, depending upon the kind of lifestyles that we live, we probably need more earth to satisfy our requirements as we go ahead than what we have now. It's not possible at all, right? We can't create another earth and migrate there, and it's also not a right thing to do actually. In the last 20-25 years, if you look at, we have consumed almost one third of the planet's natural resources. So any natural resources which are God made, we have consumed almost one third in just last 20 years. With the huge amount of industrialization happening, the urbanization happening, the developments happening, there is a significantly high amount of depletion of the natural resources which is happening. And you can imagine, if in the 20 years we have consumed one third, and if we don't kind of improve on that, if we don't reduce the speed of include consuming these natural resources, it's a matter of another few decades before a lot of these resources will actually get depleted. And if we don't live sustainably, our future generations will definitely not be able to live a healthy and comfortable life. And we have all seen these examples, right? I mean, many years, probably when I was a child, nobody ever thought that, we will be buying a water and a packaged water and we'll be paying money for, drinking water. And today, we all know we pay anywhere between 15 to 20 rupees a liter for buying a mineral water bottle, right? Similarly, nobody ever thought that we would probably be paying for an oxygen. But looking at what we have seen in the last 6-7 months, it is not surprising if in the very near future, we may start having to even pay for the oxygen, which so far is probably given free to us by the God. And hence, it's very important that we take care of these natural resources in the best possible way for our own interest as well as for the interest of our future generations. Now, whenever it's been about a year that we've started this journey, even till about a year ago, I wasn't very aware about what sustainable living is, and my lifestyle was not necessarily in line with the good sustainable living. But thanks to the various people that I kind of came across, and more knowledge made me aware, saying that no, I need to alter my lifestyle. And now that when I talk to people about sustainable living, etc., and all, in the friend circle, in the families, etc., a lot of time the people make a comment which is, I feel, are actually the myths. Now there are a lot of myths about it, and I'm going to touch only a couple of the ones which I kind of get to hear more often. The first, the people say, oh, sustainable living, that means you're going to live boring life, right? You will not do this, you will not do this, you can't eat this, you can't travel, you can't buy good clothes, or you can't eat good food, etc., and all of that. And I can tell you it's absolutely wrong, right? The more you move towards sustainable living, initially you may feel so, I mean, initially it may look a little right to you, but as you kind of get used, I mean, more and more deeper into it, you will actually realize that this life is actually far more enjoyable. You will come far more closer to yourself. You will come far more closer to your family. You will come far more closer to the nature. So your life is actually going to be far more interesting in the real sense and not in the materialistic sense. Second thing, people say that, oh, in the sustainable living, that means it's expensive. That means the first thing that comes to the people's mind is sustainable living means organic food, which is expensive. Means I have to buy something which is very expensive stuff. It is not at all expensive. the more you live and practice sustainability, the lesser and lesser expenses that you will be incurring. In fact, today only we were discussing in one of the forums about the vegan and the non-vegan aspect, and there is enough data available to say that the kind of dietary requirements that you need, or the kind of proteins and the other minerals, etc., that you need, it is far more cheaper to get those through the plant-based diet than you get through the non-vegetarian or a meat-based diet. So it's not at all expensive. Yes, it takes a little effort. You need to definitely put few efforts to kind of get to the right solutions and get to the right thing, but it's a matter of few days or talking to the right people. And nowadays there is enough options available on the net, which you can actually search and look at. And the last thing which people say, oh, it's impossible, I can't do it, it's not meant for me, I have my lifestyle which I can't compromise, or it's very difficult. Again, it may be right for the initial few change. Like any change that we do, it's always difficult in the beginning, right? Any amount of change, no matter how good it is, we always find it difficult. Even when we move from our small house to the big house with a lovely neighborhood that we have spent our childhood, we always feel uncomfortable, and then we move to the better places, we enjoy that. So any change that kind of comes into our lives is always, the transition period is a little difficult, but once we get used to it, once we settle it, we actually realize how good it was for us to go through that change. So the change is inevitable, the change is necessary, and a lot of times if managed well, these changes are good. So it's not at all difficult or impossible to live this sustainable life. Yeah. And move so these are the myths which people say. And if some of you are not following these things, you may say that, yeah, it's easy to talk but it's difficult to practice. uh, I can assure you that, I mean, like, I've seen it myself in the last about a year, the kind of small changes that I've been bringing in the lifestyle, and it's not at all difficult. We don't want the things to be perfect on day one. We don't want 100% change to happen day one. Just make sure that you keep doing small changes, be comfortable with the kind of quantum of the change that you are, and you will really kind of enjoy that. Now let's move a little more detail into this subject of sustainable living. And in my point of view, and again, this is my individual view, there are two elements of sustainable living. One, which you see on the left side, is about the natural resources. So as I said earlier, there are finite resources which are available, and how well do we use them, how judiciously we use them, is one aspect of the sustainable living, so that these resources don't deplete at a faster rate, and they are being available for a much longer period of time for our future generations. And the second aspect of it is about the pollution, environment, or whatever we call it, what we refer to that as a carbon footprint, right? So how much is the carbon footprint that we are generating, and how do we reduce that? So that's the two elements, and we'll talk about this as we go ahead, of the sustainable living. So one is using the natural resources, and second thing is how do we ensure that we reduce our carbon footprint. Now, what is carbon footprint? Again, questions which probably most of you may be knowing. I mean, some of you may still not be knowing about it. But carbon footprint is the amount of greenhouse gases that we emit in the environment. And why is it called carbon footprint? It's mainly because about 70 to 80% of those gases are carbon dioxide, and that's the reason it's called as the carbon footprint. There are a lot of other gases also, like methane, etc., which also get released in the various processes. However, what people do is they translate into the carbon equivalent, and then it is calculated. So that's why, to make it simple, make it a one common currency, it is called the carbon footprint. It's usually measured as a tons of CO2. So how many tons or how many kilos is emitted per year. And many a times that you will look at on the many literatures on the internet, etc., you will always hear these terms which is called CO2 equivalent, which is nothing else but, other than the carbon dioxide gases, if you convert the impact of that in the carbon language. So let's say, for example, methane as a gas is 25 times more harmful than carbon dioxide. So 1 ton or 1 unit of methane is equal to 25 tons or 25 units of carbon. So when I talk about it in the CO2 language, we will talk about 25 tons of CO2. Even if it is released from methane, we have converted into the common currency of the carbon dioxide, and hence we talk about that. So that's what we probably talk as the CO2 equivalent. Yeah. So that's again a very basic about the carbon footprint in as simple words as probably I can try and explain. Now, what are the major aspects that affect this carbon footprint? So if I look at the top 5 elements in our life, the consumption of electricity contributes about almost 1/4 of the carbon footprint that we generate. I mean, it's largely because, especially in India and still in many parts of the country, the major source of electricity is a coal-based electricity. Yeah, and that's one of the most environmentally polluting way of looking at it, and that contributes about 25% of our carbon footprint. The next is about the second biggest is about transportation, so which is largely talking about the fossil fuel consumption, like the petrol, diesel, the crude oil, etc., and all of that. Yeah, so that roughly contributes about 14%, when the second biggest. The third comes is about the food. So all the carbon dioxide which is generated into the various process of food making, right from growing food to consuming food to disposing food, that contributes roughly about another 14%. And then the fourth biggest is the fashion. So the ready-made garments or any kind of fashion, be it the belts, be it the accessories that we talk about, that contributes roughly about another 10% of the thing. So broadly, if you look at these four elements, so if we take care of these four elements into our life, we will be taking care of almost about 60% of the carbon footprint that we generate as an individual in our day-to-day activities. So going forward, the next few slides that we would be talking about, I would like you to think about these four things in your life: your consumption of electricity, your transportation, your consumption of the fuel, the fossil fuel, etc., the food, and the fashion. So when we'll talk about the next slides, just try and relate with saying is that what is it that you can do in these four areas to start with, so that your impact on the environment is minimized as much as possible. Now, all of us will have a question saying that, yes, it's good to know about a carbon footprint, but how do I know how much is my carbon footprint and whether it is good, whether it is bad? How do I measure? How do I look at? And again, I mean, there are two things which really helped me understand this better. One which you see on the left hand side is the onlyplanet.in. It's an initiative done by a lady, Miss Sunita Rajesh, and she has developed a very wonderful calculator. It's available on the internet at www.onlyplanet.in. It's largely done from an Indian context. You will have enough of calculators available. If you search carbon footprint calculator, you will have more than 100 calculators available worldwide. Uh, and because of each of the countries have a different impact, or each of the country has a different lifestyle, the calculators also need to bear that in mind. And here is you will get able to see what is relevance from an India perspective. So the way we as an Indians live, the way we as an Indian source electricity, or our food chain, or our efficiencies or inefficiencies into the system, is something which you will get to note here. Yeah, it's a very easy to kind of operate calculator. As you go into the details, you will realize we won't have time today to go through it in a significant detail here. And once you are kind of completing that calculation, towards the end of it, you will also have option to submit your details, and you can also help support this particular initiative, because this is being done purely on a voluntary basis. And the team is trying to look at how can we make it reach to more than 1 million people, how can we make it accessible to people through app based solutions, etc. And there are options where you can help support them through spreading words, or being joining their hands in terms of developing an app, etc., and all of that. But this is one where you will get to know about it. The second thing, if some of you are interested in reading books, then you can, I would definitely recommend you to read a book, How Bad Are Bananas? And it very, in a layman easy language, explains to you about how a carbon footprint is calculated for various things in the life. I mean, it could be as basic as sending a text message on your phone, to as complicated as a manufacturing of a car or conducting the large events, etc. So the process that is followed is that every time that you are using something, so let's say for example, let's take an example of manufacturing of a car, right? The manufacturing of a car involves a lot of elements. Let's say for example, you need basic metal, or you need plastic, or you need various parts. In manufacturing of those, there are a lot of efforts, a lot of energy is gone into that, and which generates the carbon dioxide or the lot of other gases. So like that, each and every life cycle of the manufacturing process is calculated. Similarly, the consumption process is calculated and the disposal process is calculated. And in each of these process, how much resources we are consuming, how much carbon dioxide equivalents or other gases that we are releasing is calculated with a very intense calculator. And that is what gives you the footprint of the carbon footprint. Similarly, you will also hear the terms about like water footprint, which is saying that what is my water footprint, which is nothing else but simply to say that how much water am I consuming directly or indirectly in a day. Now, typically for most of us, what we have a visibility is the consumption of water directly, saying that how much have I used for brushing my teeth, for bathing, for drinking, for washing clothes. And that's probably would typically we would call it as a as our water footprint, which is a direct water footprint. However, there's a lot indirect water footprint that you have, right? You will be amazed to see that if you buy a small size car, there is 4 lakh liter of water is gone into manufacturing of the car or the different parts of the car. Now, when you buy a car, you are increasing your water footprint by 4 lakh liter. Similarly, it's about vegetables that you grow, it's about other electronics that you buy, or whatever elements that you buy. Or if you're a non-vegetarian, then the amount of water that goes into the meat industry, etc. and all these are called your consumption based footprint, right? So that's another thing that we look at. So typically people will talk about the carbon footprint, and nowadays a lot of people talk about the water footprint as well. So as I said, the two best place where I got to learn more about it, one was the onlyplanet.in, and second was this book called How Bad Are Bananas. You can also kind of refer to any of them to get more understanding of it. Now the real conversation and the question comes, having understood these things in a very basic, and I'm conscious that we have just touched the surface of it, but I'm hoping that this would have given you a reasonably basic understanding about the concept and the what is a carbon footprint and why is it essential to reduce it. Then the question comes is, okay, now that I have understood this, what do I really need to do to live a sustainable life? What is it the changes that I can bring in, and how do I really do that? So to make it very simple, what we have tried is we have tried to put it in a very simple formula, what we refer to as a 6R formula for sustainability. Now, if we are able to follow all these 6Rs or even some of them, there is a huge contribution that we'll be able to make to the environment without really causing a much of discomfort or a compromise in our life. So what are these 6Rs? These 6Rs, the first and they are kind of probably in the order of impact that it can bring positively. The first is refuse. Second is reduce, and we'll talk about each of them as we kind of go ahead. The third is reuse, recycle, replenish, and raise your voice. So that's the 6R formula that we talk about. Now, somebody may debate, no, there are more things that I can do it, or all 6 are not relevant. There could be seventh one, or there could be something from A, something from other. Absolutely fine, right? All of us have our own ways of looking at things, but this is probably effort for our side to keep the things simple. So let's look at each of these are, what do they mean, and a few examples of how can we really implement it in our day-to-day life. Yeah, the first and the foremost is refuse. So whatever that we consume, right, think before you buy or think before you consume. Now with the age of consumerism, and because of people also getting affluent, there are a lot of people and our lifestyles have changed significantly. We end up doing a lot of things which are probably good to do but not necessary to do. I mean, we all understood the, the word essential much better during the lockdown. And that is what it in a way refers to, that do those things which are really, really essential and without which you cannot really live with. If we were to look at a simple example in the context of what we've gone through in the last 8 months, remember the first 3 weeks of the lockdown, right? Whatever you did was really essential, and there were a lot of things were unessential which we didn't do it. I mean, may not be 100% right, but that is what probably what comes to the close to. So say no to the things that you don't need. There are a lot of things in our life which we actually do need it, but we end up buying for various reasons. It could be simple reasons saying that, okay, I mean, I've grown affluent now, I can afford, so I will buy it. I mean, that's the first thing of the negative side of getting affluency, right? We end up doing or kind of buying things which we probably could have lived without it. Or it could be because of the peer pressure. My neighbor bought this, or my neighbor's child did this, so my child also should do this. Or my neighbor bought a new car, or my friend bought a new car, or my in-laws bought a new car, so I also need to now buy a bigger car because of the social status in society, etc., and all of that. So there are a lot of those things: affluency, peer pressure. Sometimes we just madly follow it, or sometimes because it is available cheap in the sale, we'll end up buying a lot of things which probably we don't really need it. Yeah. So whenever next you are trying to buy something or want to consume something, ask a very basic question: is it really required? Can I not do without it? Or can I not defer it? Do I really need to buy it today? Do I really need to buy that new fashion today just because it is on sale? Can I not buy it next year because I have enough clothes in my wardrobe right now, and this is actually not going to help me much? So look at those things. I mean, like the examples, like many a times, we are tempted to go and buy a new car, though our existing cars or existing vehicles may be running, or we may not actually have a car and we don't need it. Or the packaged food. I'm getting bored today, so I don't want to make anything at home. Let me go and pick something off the shelf from the market. Or the convenience food. Or I liked a particular fashion and I want to buy it. So why did you buy it? Just I liked it, so I bought it. Right? These are the lot of times examples that we come across, which actually are not required. So think before you really buy it. Similarly, in terms of the transportation, right? I mean, there are many times we can actually go to a nearby kirana store walking and buy things, but many of us may not do that. Either we'll take out our two-wheeler or four-wheeler. Is it really required? Is it really so far off that I need to take out a vehicle? Can I not just walk and kind of do whatever work that I need to do? Many of us also have a habit of using the lights and the fans despite of enough natural light and the air available. So think really that before I switch off the fan or before I switch off the light, do I really need that light? I mean, can I not manage with the natural light? Can I not plan my work so that I can do it maximum during the daylight, so I don't need so much of artificial light? Or, I mean, why do I need to have a plastic bag when I go to for a shopping? Why can't I carry my own kind of cloth bag and use that? Why do I need to really buy that plastic bag from the kirana wala or from a vegetable vendor or from a shopping mall? Similarly, in terms of the water bottles, right? I mean, as I was saying earlier, we buy water now, but why can't I carry my own water? We all used to do that probably when we were child. Why can't we do it now? Just because of convenience or affluence, it doesn't make sense to kind of do these things. So these are the few examples that we can really bring into the life. And the simple way is ask your question before you are buying anything, before you are kind of consuming anything. Ask, do I really need it? Can't I really look at the option which is a far more simpler version, or which is a far more easier one? So that's the first refuse. And if you are able to do this, there is a lot that you will not have to do of the other hours. The next is reduce. Now there are certain things which we can't really refuse. So can I stop traveling? No, I cannot. I have to go to the office. I have to go to buy stuff. I have to go to drop kids to the school. So it's not necessarily that we can stop the traveling. So then what do you do? That you travel smart, right? Use public transport, use carpool, use bicycle, use, if you are using a vehicle, then try and use fuel efficient vehicles. run the vehicle without air conditioning, or switch it off at these signals, so on and so forth. Or kind of club all your kind of activities or chores at one together once and do it once in a day rather than stepping out of house 5 times in a day. Can we, or the other example could be the use of water, be it brushing, be it bathing, be it kind of cooking, or cloth washing, etc., and all of that. uh, can I not use lesser water, right? Can I not make sure that I don't create a waste? Similarly, in terms of the electricity, I'm sitting in my house and there are 4 lights. Do I really need all 4 lights? Can I not manage with a focus light or a task light or a light in the area that I'm looking at? Or if you look at about the diet, I mean, do I really need to be a non-vegetarian eater? I mean, can I not turn vegetarian, or even better, can I not turn vegan, etc.? Or can I not buy the products which are less on the packaging efforts, etc.? So there are a lot of those things which we can't avoid, but we can definitely reduce. And one of the big thing, if you can't do any of the ones which I mentioned earlier, if you can just focus on reducing waste, that itself will save anything between 20 to 30% of all the resources that we consume. Waste is one of the biggest problems that we have, and it is said that if we treat just a food waste and the carbon footprint that the food waste generates, it will be the third biggest country in the world. Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of waste that we do of the food. So reduce is the second. If you can't refuse, try and reduce the impact of what you do. After having done these things, look at reuse, right? Don't just throw away because you don't like it, or it is out of fashion, or it is probably broken a little bit. Try and reuse it as much as we can. Many of us still have the habit of preserving the gift wrappers, paper bags, the plastic bags, etc. I mean, reuse them rather than just throwing and it going into the land fields or into the marine life, the damaging. It's better that we reuse as much as we can, right? There are many times we need an item just for one purpose. Don't be afraid of borrowing it, renting it, or be open to lend your things to somebody. Be open to share, right? These are all the things which we have learned as a part of our culture, and we can actually definitely follow it. And the last but not the least is, in case if you really don't find any use, then instead of throwing it away, donate to somebody. There are a lot of people who actually need these things. If you don't know anybody in your nearby areas, there are enough NGOs available, and you can check out in your local localities, or you will find enough needy people on your road when you step out. So donate it to them, right? They will be far more happy to receive these things and make use of that. Then comes recycle, right? If we have reused, we've done everything, things are broken. Let's say, for example, if we have a plastic bucket, or we have a steel bucket, or we have a chair, it's been used completely, it's broken, I can't do anything about it, have fixed multiple times, but now there is no option but to throw it. Don't just dump it in the garbage. Yeah, I mean, most of this garbage goes into the landfill, and we all know the amount of problems that it creates in terms of emitting very hazardous gases, and also deteriorating the quality of land or the soil. So don't throw it away just like that. Go for recycling it. Yeah, and the very basic of recycling is segregation of the waste. I know in India we still have a long way to go in terms of waste segregation and recycling, but if you look at in the last couple of years, a lot of efforts, awareness, and the attempts have been done by people to drive these things. The simple thing that you can do is segregate your waste into dry, wet, electric, and medical, right? You will be amazed to hear that 80 to 85% of the waste that we generate is actually recyclable. It's only about 10 to 15% of the waste that is impossible to recycle because of the smaller nuances. But if waste segregated well, about 85 to 80 to 85% of the waste can be recycled. Now just imagine that much of lesser waste will go into the dump yards, that much of the lesser waste will go into the nalas and end up into the rivers or in the water bodies, that much of lesser emissions will happen, and these things will come back in terms of reformed way. I mean, even water, a lot of places, there are sewage treatment plants which are happening, and that water is being used for a non-essential or a non-critical purposes like gardening, washing of vehicles, etc., and all of that. So recycling is another critical aspects that we probably need to bring into our life. Again, you will have thousands of excuses for not doing it, and says that I segregate, but when my housekeeping staff comes, they mix it everything, or when the municipality and comes and collects it, they kind of mix it up everything. So what is the point of me doing it? uh, those things have been improving and will continue to improve. We need to ensure that we do our bit, and how do we take care of others also to follow that, we'll talk it about in the last hour. Then the fifth R comes is about the replenish. Now it's a little difficult one, and the fewer options available, you can't really replenish nature, right? But what we can definitely do by way of indirect things is planting more trees. Now more trees obviously is going to consume a lot of carbon dioxide as their food, so that it works like a carbon sink where the carbon is absorbed, and also it releases the oxygen. So obviously that's, in a way, you are able to replenish oxygen in the atmosphere. Or the rainwater harvesting. Yeah, we all have learned about rainwater harvesting in our school days or have seen enough videos. If we start practicing it, right? I still remember in many villages, and in my house in the village, we actually collect the rainwater, which lasts us almost for about a year or so. So we use that water in our village for the drinking purposes, and that's the cleanest water that we get. If you don't have enough storage, and if you have completed your storage, at least put this water back into the ground. Especially it is much needed in the metros now, because of the huge amount of concretization being done. There is very little water that goes inside the that kind of percolates down the earth, and that leads to kind of damaging the soil quality. You will see the trees will get uprooted more frequently because they don't get enough water, or they don't get enough good quality soil. Because of that, your water will start, whatever is the land or the water, borewell water will start getting contaminated, etc. And as in Bombay we are closer to the sea, a lot of our sea water will slowly and gradually start coming into the this land, and the soil quality will keep deteriorating. And we can definitely move towards the renewable energy sources like wind or a solar, etc., and all of that. That's the way we can try and replenish. And one critical point about the planting trees, it's not only important that you plant a tree, right? What is more important is you ensure that the tree grows bigger. Today the survival rate of planting a tree is less than probably 20%. So if there are 100 trees planted, much lesser than actually 20 trees, even 20 is actually a bigger number, actually survive. So we all feel good about planting tree. I would say is that pay more importance in terms of plant few, but make sure that they see the complete life cycle of a tree, and they grow into a bigger tree. So the nurturing the tree is far more important once you have planted the tree. And let me talk about the last R, and we'll take probably another 3-4 minutes before we close and open for Q&A. Last R is raise your voice. And here I'm not talking about, being kind of carrying out morchas and dharnas and etc. No. And that's one thing probably which, many times anybody who talks about the environment, that's the first impression that comes to the mind, saying that he's an activist, which is not a word seen in the right context. But when we talk about the raise your voice, there are a lot of things that we can do in a very nice, cordial way. So demand for eco-friendly product. That's one way of raising your voice. When you're going to buy things, ask for saying that, do you have an eco-friendly options, right? Do you have a cloth bag instead of a plastic bag, which I can reuse, etc.? Will you find all the options at one go? Probably not. But if the more and more people ask for it, I'm sure there will be people who will be willing to provide that. It's like creating the demand, and there you will have enough of people who will be there to service the demand. Few years ago, there were very few people talking about the eco-friendly products, and now today you see so many people talking, and hence there are so many options that are available in the market to buy the eco-friendly product. Demand for eco-friendly policies, right? We all keep complaining to government, and now thanks to the digital media and the social media, etc., a common man's access to the people who are in the power, or the people who can make a different or make a policies, is much easier. So use all the possible medias that are available, the social media, the websites, the and various other things, to make your voice heard, to talk about need for eco-friendly policies, need for eco-friendly products, so on and so forth. Complain if you see something wrong. If you see somebody is cutting tree, somebody is not following the right practices, somebody is polluting the environment, which they are not supposed to do, complain it to right authorities. Again, in each of our cities and countries, if you kind of type on the Google, you will definitely get enough of numbers where you can complain about these things. Don't get discouraged if your complaint is not addressed at one go. Have a patience and be at it. Sooner or later people will have to kind of address your complaints, and there are enough ways, the legitimate ways, the legal ways, to put pressure on them and get those implementation. Right, feel free to share your suggestions wherever you see that people are open for suggestions, be it at your home, be it at your society, be it in your company, be it in your friend circle. Be open to give suggestions and appreciate the suggestions. Be open to receive suggestions as well. Share your stories and inspire others. Few years ago, I was very averse of sharing anything on the Facebook, till the time a very good friend of mine told, saying that no, if you're doing something good, right, you must share. The intent here is not to boast about oneself, saying that how great a human being I am. That's not the intent. But the intent is, when you share your good practices, you are actually inspiring somebody else to also follow that. You are actually also sharing your knowledge with others, and you are making others also feel, saying that yes, there is somebody who has done it, I can also do it. So the idea about this is not to boast about oneself, but is to make it comfortable to others for the inspirations. And the last but not the least is make the best use of the social media. As I said earlier, I mean, technology and any innovations, it depends upon how you use it. If you use it well, it's actually a kind of a boom for us. It's the best thing that can happen. But if you don't use it well, obviously it can become a curse. So use the social media to talk more about these things, share your ideas, share your initiatives, ask for suggestions, give your suggestions, and that's how you make everybody aware about these things. Yeah. So that was the brief session that we wanted to do today about the basics of the sustainable living. We heard about why is it important to live sustainable life, the myths about sustainable living, what is carbon footprint, how do we calculate it, and what we kind of look at it. And we spoke about the 6 R's: the refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, replenish, and raise your voice to live towards the sustainable living. So thank you very much, everybody, for being a wonderful audience in terms of listening. I hope you found this session useful and there is something which you take out of it. And the only request which I have is, if you really liked anything of it, at least take a pledge to do something small in your life starting today, right? Even if it means taking a smallest of the initiative, start somewhere, and slowly and gradually you will see that you would want to do more. If you want to reach out to us, our contact details are on the screen. You can reach out through us on the email or through the WhatsApp on the number given, and we'll be more than happy to have a conversations, understand your perspectives, and do these kind of sessions for you, your family, your social gatherings, anything. So thank you very much, everybody. And we kind of come to an end of the conversations. We are now open for the Q&A sessions, and Avinash is going to help me answer the questions, if any. So Avinash, if you can let us know if there are any questions or any comments from the people on the Facebook.
Yes, hi. So it was a great session, Sagar, and it's a lot of insights. So we have a few questions, I guess I saw in the Facebook comments. So one is about solar panels
Yeah.
from Shantaji. But a lot of people are talking about solar panels, and I guess that's a great start. Also, which will be, so. If you can give more insights, how can solar panels help in?
Yeah. So definitely solar is the one of the best source of renewable energy. Now, of course, when the solar panels needs to be made, yeah, it consumes the resources, it kind of generates a certain amount of a carbon footprint, etc. But with that one solar panel, the amount of electricity that we are able to generate, I mean, typically we've seen the solar panels last anything upwards of the 10 years, and the amount of electricity that it generates, right, it reduces the overall carbon footprint, because then you don't need to rely on the coal based or a thermal based or the, let's say, nuclear energy generation, which is a far more disadvantageous to the environment. And not to forget, I mean, like once you switch to the solar panels, because of the cost metrics that they work, you will also save a lot of money, right? In today's scenario where the solar panels have become so cheap and the power is becoming expensive day by day, a very broad mathematics says that if you are installing the solar panel in your building rooftop or whatever, it pays for itself within about 3 to 4 years. So the whatever electricity that you generate out of, let's say, for example, that 4 year period, and I'm just giving a broad thumb rule, it varies from a society to society and from a matrix to matrix. After 4 year, you will be getting that much of electricity actually free of cost. So you are not only helping the environment, but you are also getting richer by moving to the renewable source of energy.
Yes, that's yeah, good information. And the other thing, some comments I saw on rainwater harvesting. You
Yeah.
also emphasized on that. If you can emphasize a bit more for the
Yeah. Again,
audience.
it's a very critical, because there are two sources of water that we get post the monsoon. One is each of the municipalities or the governments have the huge dams and the lakes on the outskirts of the city that supply water through us through the pipeline connection, right? So that's one source of water. And the second source of water that we use a borewell water. So you will set up a borewell, I mean, in your society, in your house, in your village, or in your nearby areas, and you use that. Now, there are two aspects of the rainwater harvesting. The first aspect is whatever the rainwater that you get, you collect and store it for yourself, right? Now, each for us, and especially in the cities like Mumbai, it's very difficult to create our own storages. However, into the mini metros or the people who have raw houses, etc., they can actually create the underground tanks and store this water. Now, depending upon the capacity of the tank that you use, you can store the water. And if this water has been stored directly from the rain through the filtration process, actually this water can retain a good quality for a year and a half. So you can actually use that water for your potable consumption, like drinking water, the cooking water, etc. So that's a very first kind of a rainwater harvesting, which is very important. But as I said, that it needs a tank to store, and which may or may not be possible everywhere. The second amount of rainwater harvesting is you let as much water go into the earth as possible. And again, if you go into the interiors, etc., there is not a problem, because it's still, you see the land which is like a earth, right? It's not concretized. However, in a city like Bombay, if you see, you will hardly find a place for the water to go deep down the earth. It's all concretized, and hence it goes through the sewage tunnel, and that sewage line is linked to the nalas, which are then kind of flowing into the sea. So that amount is severely wasted and goes into the sea, making your groundwater levels deplete year after year. If you're able to put that water back down into the ground, the groundwater level will recharge. And when you try and kind of set up a bore well, right, you will find the water level rise at a very good level. You won't have to dig deep. Just to give an example, few years ago, if the water level were available at probably 30 or 40 feet, now in the same place, you need to dig about 130 or 40 feet to get water. So that is a second kind of a rainwater harvesting, which is very much needed and applicable for city like Mumbai's or any metros actually, or the mini metros, etc. Again, if you're talking about the Mumbai, then there is a Mission Green Mumbai available. You can reach out to them; they will help you do the rainwater harvesting, and there are many other NGOs available who can actually help you set up. And actually, you don't need them. You just need to ensure that whatever the water is collected on your terrace, through a pipeline, it is put into the ground. That's as simple as you can do at the basic level. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. It's great to know it's as simple as that, where people think it's a complicated process and they call a lot of consultants, I guess.
Yeah, you just need to kind of connect your outflow at the terrace to through a pipe to the ground level, and just put it little deep into the ground, and your rainwater harvesting is done.
Great. And one more point mentioned, I guess, by Subhajit, saying that to make a complaint, as you said, if there's something going wrong, I guess 1916 is the number.
Yeah, if you're in Mumbai, then 1916 is the number of BMC, which you can call out to, and they will address your complaints. Otherwise, nowadays, Twitter is one of the best medium to raise your complaints. All the government bodies are available on the Twitter. All the ministers are available. Their offices are available on the Twitter. In India, you also have each of the governments having their own websites and the portal to raise a complaint. You can complain to the PMO also. Right to information is another good way of getting authorities to move. So there are enough options, and each state has their own helpline, their own website. Each municipality has their numbers. So if you will Google, you will easily find what's the complaint number for your own area. And as I said, Twitter is one of the best medium nowadays for made your voice heard and complain.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, Twitter is a really great social media platform, which we all have access to, and we can connect very easily with the concerned officials. Yeah. And it will work. Yeah, I guess that's it. We've gotten a lot of likes and a lot of comments. Excellent session. It's great to hear. Good to see people are have learned a lot during the session. So I guess that's it with the questions. Any last few words you can mention for the people?
Yeah. So once again, thank you very much, everybody, for joining into this session. We try to keep it very simple and from a layman perspective, because I myself don't understand too much of technicalities, etc. So try to keep it simple, and hope you liked it. Hope you found the session useful. Do give us your feedback, whether you liked it or any areas that you want us to improve upon. We would also love, if you like this session, then we would love to conduct these sessions for your family, for your friend circle, for your kitty party group, for your corporate group. I mean, this is purely a voluntary exercise, so we don't charge anything for this, so you don't have to worry about money aspect of it. Our intent is that more and more people should know about it and start following about it. The only request that we would have is that make sure that we have at least about 15 people whom we can talk to, so that efforts are kind of optimized in the best possible way. I shared my contact details, or you can like our Facebook page and put the queries there. And as I said, we are open to hear any suggestions, any feedbacks to make these things better and improve ourselves. And Avinash, a big thanks, special thanks to you. We've been wonderful. I mean, you're the one who pushed me to get into this, and I really enjoyed this. And you provided the excellent support. So thanks, Avinash. Excellent support from you.
Yeah, it's great hearing this. I was like, the public should know about it, because I guess not many people are aware, and awareness is the great thing right now, in need of the hour. So, so it's great having you. And so bye for now. Let's try and have a next session soon.
Yeah.
Greater insights. Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.